The rain hammered the skylight of the small apartment like a drum roll before a tragedy, mimicking the frantic beat of Elias's heart. He stood by the window, hands shaking, watching the city blur into neon streaks. Tomorrow was Luna's 8th birthday, and the entire edifice of the beautiful, necessary lie he'd maintained for 12 agonizing months was about to crumble. His little girl, born with a heart fragile as spun glass, believed her mother, Sarah, was away on a year-long mission trip, a story Elias had woven to shield her from the shattering reality of abandonment. The worst part wasn't the lie itself. It was the school's mandatory, much-anticipated Family Heritage Week celebration, which culminated in a filmed segment where both parents were required to discuss Luna's unique story. Sarah, who was long gone and unreachable, was supposed to walk into that classroom on Thursday. Failure to produce her meant not just exposing the lie, but risking the emotional shock that the doctor had warned could be devastating to Luna's already compromised health. He had exhausted every friend, family member, and obscure contact. And now, with the clock striking midnight, Elias was a desperate man with exactly 7 hours to execute an impossible, morally dubious plan. He had to find a total stranger and beg them to be his wife for a week. The air in the room felt too thick to breathe, charged with the pure, terrifying dread of a father on the brink of failing his most important mission. If you believe in the power of kindness, second chances, and the desperate acts of a father's love, please take a moment to like this video, comment your favorite part, share this story with someone who needs inspiration, and subscribe to the Kindness of Americans channel right now. At 5:03 a.m., Elias found himself perched awkwardly on a bench outside a small, independent coffee shop that advertised 24-hour service. He was unshaven, dressed in a wrinkled shirt, and gripping a flimsy, handwritten contract of employment and non-disclosure he'd drafted in a panic. Inside, near the counter, sat a woman named Amelia. She was nursing a cup of tea, reading a heavily underlined paperback, and radiating an air of quiet self-possession that seemed to mock his chaos. Elias had watched 3 potential candidates come and go, but Amelia, with her kind eyes, patient demeanor as she interacted with the barista, and a worn silver locket she kept touching, felt right. He knew he was insane, but his options had dissolved into nothingness. He walked inside, his legs heavy with the sheer absurdity of his task, and slid into the chair opposite her without asking. Amelia looked up, her expression shifting from mild curiosity to guarded alarm as she took in his wild, pleading gaze. He didn't introduce himself. He simply laid the contract down, pushing it towards her, and began to speak in a low, choked whisper, recounting the core of his tragedy. Sarah's vanishing act, Luna's heart condition, the Family Heritage Day, and the terrifying medical prediction hanging over their heads. He promised her $5,000, money he didn't have but would find, just for 7 days of performance. He offered a guarantee of anonymity, swearing she would vanish from their lives the moment the week was over. Amelia listened, completely silent, her tea growing cold, her eyes never leaving his. He watched her process the sheer, unadulterated desperation of his request, the impossible moral weight of impersonating a lost mother, and the immediate, profound danger to a child she had never met. When he finished, the silence was suffocating, broken only by the hiss of the espresso machine, and he knew, with chilling clarity, that this was the final, non-negotiable moment where his daughter's world would either be saved or destroyed. Amelia's initial reaction was a slow, deliberate headshake, a motion that conveyed a polite but firm refusal, an understandable defense against a bizarre and emotionally dangerous proposition. She started to gather her things, her gaze avoiding the wild hope swimming in Elias's tired eyes. But Elias didn't move. He continued to sit there, not arguing or raising his voice, but simply allowing the sheer, raw vulnerability of his situation to hang in the air. He didn't talk about the money anymore. He only talked about Luna. He spoke of the meticulous way she planned her mother's return. The little calendar marked with heart stickers, the small, profound sentences she whispered to her stuffed animals about when Mommy would be home. It was the purity of the child's belief, the devastating evidence of a love Elias couldn't bear to break, that finally made Amelia pause. She reached up and touched the locket at her throat, a faint tremor running through her hand. She confessed, her voice barely audible, that she had been through her own loss, a complex grief that had left her adrift and searching for purpose. The idea of lying was abhorrent, but the thought of a young girl's heart breaking, possibly literally, became an unbearable counterweight. She looked at Elias, seeing not a con artist, but a man fighting a battle he had already lost, but refused to surrender. Finally, with a weary sigh that contained the weight of her own past, she pushed the contract back towards him and said she didn't need the money, but she did need to know everything about Sarah, every detail, every memory. The lie had to be perfect, because Luna deserved a mother, even if only for a few days. The next 72 hours blurred into a surreal, exhausting training camp. Elias poured out years of marriage into Amelia's waiting ears, Sarah's favorite color, chartreuse, the pet name she had for Luna, Little Star Eater. The story of their proposal on a rainy pier. Amelia, a natural mimic, absorbed the information, internalizing the mannerisms, the cadence, and the essential love that defined the lost woman. The moment Amelia met Luna was a moment of profound, terrifying beauty. Elias watched from the kitchen as Amelia, playing the role of the returning mother, dropped to her knees. Luna flew across the living room, her small, frail body crashing into Amelia's arms with a soundless, joyful sob. Amelia, without a moment of hesitation, began using the secret phrases, hugging Luna in a way that felt instantly familiar, and the child's relief was a palpable, visible force that seemed to flush the fragility from her face. Elias saw Luna laugh, a real, unburdened laugh, for the first time in months. The performance was flawless, but what stunned Elias was the genuineness of Amelia's connection. She didn't just play the role, she mothered. She helped Luna with her math homework, patiently brushing Luna's hair when she couldn't sleep, and even fixed a broken toy that had defeated Elias for weeks. The tension in the house began to shift, replaced by an unsettling, tender domestic rhythm. The lie felt less like a cage and more like a temporary, beautiful haven where a family that never existed could briefly find peace. As the week progressed towards the final hurdle, the Family Heritage Day video, Amelia did more than just prepare. She became Elias's silent partner in grief and hope. One evening, she found him staring at Sarah's old photographs, a rare moment of unguarded weakness. Instead of offering platitudes, Amelia simply sat beside him, sharing the story of her own complicated past, a story that involved a path she regretted and a deep, unmet need for redemption. They spoke for hours, two damaged souls finding temporary solace in the shared, intense reality of their bizarre arrangement. The boundary between their roles and their true selves began to dissolve. Elias realized he was no longer talking to the actress hired to save his daughter, but to a woman of immense courage and unexpected depth. On the eve of the presentation, as they rehearsed their lines, the carefully crafted narrative about Sarah's humanitarian work, Amelia looked at him and said, "It's not enough to be perfect. It has to be true. She has to feel the love, not the lines." Elias simply nodded, knowing that, somehow in the deepest sense of the word, Amelia had become true to Luna, and to him too. The moment of the performance arrived in a blinding rush of bright lights and nervous energy. The camera crew was set up in the school's assembly hall. Luna, radiant in her birthday dress, sat between Elias and Amelia, holding their hands with fierce, proprietary joy. Elias recited his prepared lines about Luna's resilience and kindness, his voice cracking with emotion. Then it was Amelia's turn. She started with Sarah's rehearsed script, talking about the importance of family. But halfway through, She stopped. She looked down at Luna, her eyes brimming with a depth of feeling that wasn't performance, and gently lifted the silver locket from around her neck. "This locket holds the memories of the people I love most," Amelia said, her voice smooth and heartfelt. But this time, it was her voice. She didn't mention mission trips or humanitarian aid. She spoke directly to Luna about the strength of her little heart, about the kind of extraordinary courage it takes to love deeply, and about how every person, no matter where they are, carries the light of that love with them. She placed the locket into Luna's hand, a symbol of a love that transcended biology and pretense. Elias watched as the lie, which should have been a cold, calculated transaction, transformed into a genuine, spontaneous act of unconditional motherly affection. The camera kept rolling, capturing a moment that was profoundly honest, even if the surrounding circumstances were fabricated. Luna hugged Amelia with all her might, oblivious to the emotional magnitude of the scene, her face alight with the genuine, pure happiness of a daughter who felt finally, truly whole.